Everybody, and welcome to the Bitcoin Jedi channel. And in this video, I wanted to talk about 1%. So the title says, can 1% change my life? So this is the topic today of this video. And I'm going to start by showing you what the average person shoots for when it comes to returns on their investment, because most people use the S&P 500 as kind of like a target range for how much you should earn on your investments annually. And the S&P 500 is used typically as a staple because it beats inflation, and that's what people want to do. They want to be able to beat inflation. So the Fed has a target inflation rate of a little over 2%, which we know is total BS, but that's what they say, 2%. So things get 2% more expensive every single year. Your dollar loses 2% of its value every single year. Like I said, we know it's more than that, but that's what the Fed says. So with the S&P 500, as you can see here on the screen, the S&P 500 index has historically delivered an average annual return of roughly 10%. So the 10% average is a broad historical average encompassing returns from the index's inception in 1957 to the present date, right? So, for instance, the index saw a 31.49% gain in 2019 and a 28.71% gain in 2021, but also a negative 18.11 loss for the year in 2022. So this 10% is an average since 1957. You know, you may be down for 1 year, but up for another year. Okay. And people calculate this in for their retirement, 10%. And now this is annually. Okay. So actually what I want to do is I'm going to do an investment calculator. I'm going to grab one and I will show you, let's see, does this one work pretty good? Let's grab this one. Okay, yeah, this will work. All right, so let's say you invest $5,000 over 30 years, and we put this in at 10%. And it compounds, actually, let's change this to it compounds monthly, because let's just say that you were trading the S&P 500 and you could compound your gains every single month. So amount of recurring investment, you're going to put an additional $100 into it, right? So over 30 years, you're going to end up with $325,235. Not bad, right? And that's what people shoot for when it comes to retirement. They sit here and think, well, if I invest this much money over this length of time, I'll end up with this much to retire with. So this obviously isn't going to be enough to retire. So what people need to do is keep reinvesting each year. So amount of recurring investment, maybe we'll put another 5,000 in there. Actually, no, 500. You see the difference. This is probably wanting you to put 500 in each month because we have the compounding frequency monthly. And we'll see this change probably if we switch this to yearly or annually. You see there's a difference there. So just reinvesting something back into it, you're getting closer to a number that you can retire with. But in 30 years from today, is 1.1 million going to be enough to retire? Probably not. So you'll have to invest more. So if we put in here 10,000, that only brings us up to 1.2 million, right? So it doesn't even change it all that much, right? So you're going to have to invest more. If we put in, let's say 1,000 here, now we jump to 2.2 million. All right, so we got to change this to 5,000. Now we're at 10 million. Okay, now we're looking at something. Now we're talking about something worthwhile to retire with. All right. So this is what people do when they look into the future, like, okay, how much do I need to retire with? And they run these numbers and they come up with these figures. All right. So now let's talk about what I mean when I say, can 1% change your life? Now, what I'm talking about is not using traditional finance, but using cryptocurrency to not just gain 10% annually, not to gain 10% even monthly. I'm talking about gaining 30% monthly, which would come out to 360% annually. And you know the funny thing is, these calculators won't even let you put in that much. Look, if I put in 360, it won't even let me. It won't even let me put 360. But look at how the returns change if I even put it at 36. Let's see, can I put this at 90? It won't even let me. It won't even let me put 90% in there. It says you can't even gain 90% annually. What about 50? Okay, it lets me put in 50%. You see how crazy the numbers get, even if you're able to not just gain 50% annually, but I'm talking about 30% monthly. That would be 360% annually, and it won't even let me put that in the calculator to show you what I mean. Okay? So you see how huge of a difference it makes if you can start increasing your returns. See, this estimate rate of return at even just 50% annually jumps you to 29. What is that? Man, that's a 29 billion? That's insane. That's huge numbers. So let's just talk about this for a second. All right? So, if I jump over here to my spreadsheet, and I'm talking about 1% here. All right? So, even starting with a trading account in cryptocurrency with $100, you're starting with $100, and you'll notice, see, after the first month, if you started July 1st, when you finish the month, you need to have gained $30. That's 30% of 100. That just starts compounding every month. So you'll notice after 2 years, $100 turns into $41,753.91. That's some good money right there. Now you're talking. That's just after 2 years from $100. Right? So $100, that's a $100 investment. And then you trade. You got to trade and get 1% a day. Now, what does that look like? Over here on the side, I have here 1% of $100. So each day, you'll see the numbers change. But day one, you need to make $1. You need to make a trade and make $1. So on day 2, your balance is 101. Then you need to make $1.01. Then you're at 102.01. So you see it starts compounding. And here's the crazy part. Starting with $100 on July 1st, 2025, and you go down through here, it only takes until September 9th of 2025 to double your money. You're already at $200.68 when you get to September 9th. That's just getting 1% every single day, staying diligent and getting 1%. Now let's really change this up. Instead of starting with $100, let's say you start with $500. You change this. Boom. So this $500 after 2 years of trading like this turns into $208,000 $208,769 after 2 years of trading, which means if you have $208,000 in your trading account, that means you're making $62,000 a month. That's $62,000 is 30% of $208,000. Now, if we put that over here, 500, we switch this up. Now, starting with $500, you need to make $5 a day. And it just changes every single day. And again, you'll see if you just go a little over 2 months, you've already doubled your money. So you've gone from $500 to $1,003.38 after a little over 2 months, going from July 1st to September 9th, 2025, and you've doubled up your account. And now you'll see you're starting to make $10 a day at this point. Now, if we change this up even more and we start with $1,000, you see how much this changes. Boom. Now you're at, after 2 years of doing this, just shooting for 1% a day, 1% a day, after 2 years, your account balance goes from $1,000 to $417,539. At that point, you're making $125,000 a month in trading, continuing to get just 1% a day. 1% a day. So if I get the calculator out, look at your daily, when you have those numbers in there, $417,539 times 0.01. You're making $4,175 per day. That's the exact same numbers as making 1% of $1,000 to make $10. The numbers don't change. Just the account balance changes. So at any point during this time, when you feel like you're comfortable, even here, this is where you break 10K a month. When you have $39,373 in your trading account, you're making $11,812 a month. That's just 1% a day. You hit that by, well, let's like little over a year and 2 months. You go from 1,000 to 39,000, and you're making 11 grand per month. That's 30% of $39,373. So, in closing, can 1% change your life? Absolutely. Thanks for watching this video. Stay safe. Have yourself a blessed day. Click the link in the description to join our Discord and jump into the community and join in on the trading. We'll see you in the Discord.